Good afternoon, everyone. I am coming to finish up Chapter 9, the muscular system. I'm going to pick up from where the midterm left off. So we had covered muscles of the head and neck, muscles of mastication, and facial muscles. That's where the midterm left off. And so I'm going to pick up with the muscles that move the pectoral girdle. Hopefully you still have this sheet that I gave you, which lists all the muscles that you'll need to know for this quiz coming up. If you do not have it, I will make sure that it is posted on Blackboard so that you can print it off and you can follow along with that sheet as I go through the muscles that you'll need to know. In addition to that, there is no diagram associated with this quiz, so you will not have a diagram, even though I will hold up some of the diagrams that are in the textbook, but that's just to give you an idea of where these muscles are and what their functions are. In addition to that, it's really important that you go back and you look at your notes from the beginning of this chapter. At the beginning of the chapter, we talked about the points of attachment, the tendons attaching muscle to bone, the aponeurosis attaching muscle to muscle, as well as the various ways that muscles are named. Muscles are named according to the 8 characteristics that we listed at the beginning of the chapter, such as size, location, action, whether they're superficial or deep. Make sure you go back to those notes and review that information, because on your quiz you may be asked what a particular muscle is named according to. So it'll be important to know that information, or just to revisit it. Okay, I'm going to start with the muscles that move the pectoral girdle. So if you recall, the pectoral girdle consists of 2 bones. We said the clavicle and the scapula are responsible for attaching the upper extremities to the rest of the axial skeleton. Let me put a pin in it real quick, because I also want to tell you to make sure that when you view this video, and you'll have access to it all the way up until class time, make sure you take notes. It's going to be a very good idea for you to take notes. So just make sure that you have your notes, and I will not allow you to have this sheet on the quiz. But if you take your notes on a separate sheet of paper, who knows what you might have or might be able to use. That's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, so the 3 muscles that you need to know in regard to those that move the pectoral girdle include trapezius, levator scapulae, and pectoralis minor. For the most part, I'm going to go through the muscles and let you know what it is that you may need to know about them. If there's nothing additional that I add to a muscle in a particular group, then you'll just need to know that that particular muscle falls under that particular group or category, like the muscles that move the pectoral girdle. Okay, as far as trapezius, we identified the fact that trapezius is named according to its shape, and I have a old lab manual that I used to use here, so I can show you where trapezius is located. You can see it listed there, and actually this is on the outside, and this is the cutaway section, so trapezius would actually be covering all of those muscles. And you can also see deltoid, which is the muscle of the shoulder. Now, deltoid is not one that helps to move the pectoral girdle. Trapezius is. In addition to that, levator scapulae is named according to its action, and it falls under the category of muscles that help to move the pectoral girdle. And then finally, we have pectoralis minor. Now, pectoralis minor, you just need to know that it's part of this group. Anytime there's a minor muscle, there is a major muscle somewhere. But it just so happens the pectoralis major is a muscle that helps us to move the arm. So just know the pectoralis minor belongs to this particular group that moves the pectoral girdle, and it assists the major. Now we're going to go to the muscles that move the arm. Something to keep in mind is that the muscle groupings precede the area that they're going to move. For example, the muscles that will move the arm, let me back this up some so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. The muscles that help to move your arm in its entirety are located in the shoulder region. Some of them are also located in the upper back. The muscles that would help to move the forearm, this part of your arm, are located in the upper arm. So the muscle grouping precedes the area that it's going to move. So now that we're going to talk about the muscles that move the arm, all of these muscles that you see listed here, and I'll pronounce them for you: coracobrachialis, pectoralis major, latissimus dorsi, deltoid, subscapularis, infraspinatus, and if you could please include another bullet point, and that would be supra, S-U-P-R-A, spinatus, S-P-I-N-A-T-U-S. Supraspinatus needs to also be included in that group. Hopefully I'll have a picture that I can show you so that you will understand the location of these particular muscles. Yes, I do have one. Okay, so coracobrachialis, you just need to know that this particular muscle belongs to the muscle group that moves the arm. Pectoralis major. Pectoralis major is actually a very broad, large muscle, and that's the muscle of the chest. And let me see if we have a picture of it. Yes. This large muscle right here, all of this is on the chest wall, and it actually helps to adduct your arm. When it contracts, it can bring the entire arm across the body. It moves the arm. So pectoralis major is that large muscle of the chest that helps to adduct the arm. And if you actually take your arm and move it across and put it in front of you, you can feel the contraction of that muscle. Latissimus dorsi is a muscle that helps to move the arm, but it's actually located on the back. And the word dorsi should kind of give you the idea that sounds like dorsal. And when we talked about the dorsal cavity way back in chapter 1, the dorsal cavity was on the back side. Well, latissimus dorsi is sometimes referred to as the muscle that creates the wings of the back. And that's because the lats, as you see right here, that muscle right there, sometimes in weight training and bodybuilding and all that, it's called a lat spread, where you make that muscle really come out wide. And it actually creates like a V to the person's back, almost looking like they have wings coming out from the side. That's the name, wings of the back. Latissimus dorsi helps to move the arm. And it's very, very prominent in swimmers especially, because when they do the butterfly stroke, that's the one stroke I cannot do. I look like a sinking seal. But anyway, because you have to fully rotate your arm, latissimus dorsi is the muscle that helps with that. Okay, I've shown you where deltoid is. Here's another picture of deltoid down here that you can see. That muscle of the shoulder is named according to its shape. It helps to move the arm. And then the next three that we have, subscapularis, infraspinatus, and supraspinatus. Well, the prefix sub means below. Scapularis is telling you the scapula. So it's the muscle that's below the scapula. But then when we look at the next two, infraspinatus and supraspinatus, it sounds like the reference is being made to the spine. Well, it is being made to an anatomical structure called the spine of the scapula, not the spine like the spinal cord that we would normally think about. So if you look at this diagram here at the bottom, no, the one at the top. Okay, where you see the white, that is actually the scapula. So this part right here is what's called the spine of the scapula. You know, in those Feed the Children commercials that I really can't stand to look at, it really just breaks my heart to see them. But when you see the children, they're so emaciated that you can literally see, if you're looking at them from the back, you can see the spine of the scapula. So supraspinatus and infraspinatus are not referring to the spine such as the spinal cord. They're referring to the spine of the scapula. Therefore, infra, the prefix, would tell you that that particular muscle is below the spine, while supra is indicating that it's above the spine of the scapula. So let's look here. This picture doesn't indicate it as well as I would like it to. Okay, I'm going to start with this one. Here's the spine of the scapula. The muscle that's above it would be supraspinatus. Now, infraspinatus would be below the spine of the scapula. And I'm going to turn it over to a different diagram so that you can see that one. Just that first muscle immediately below the spine of the scapula is infraspinatus. And then subscapularis, looking at the person from the anterior view now, from the front, down here, where here's the clavicle, so back there is the scapula. So this particular muscle is actually beneath the surface of the scapula. Because remember, the scapula is on the back side. So since it's on the posterior side, the underside of the scapula would be here. So subscapularis would be on the underside of the scapula. All of those muscles are responsible for helping to move the arm. Make sure you know the muscle groupings in the category that they belong to. Muscles that move the forearm are located in the upper arm. And many of these we know. We've got biceps brachii, which is named according to the divisions of attachment or the numbers of heads. It has 2. Brachialis, brachioradialis, named according to origin and insertion. And then triceps brachii, which is located on the back of the arm, and it has 3 divisions of attachment. All of those muscles are located around the humerus, and they all are responsible for helping to move the forearm. Therefore, the next grouping that we have, the muscles that move the hand, are located in the forearm. See, all of these muscles here are helping to move my hand. And those that you need to know include flexor carpi radialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, and extensor digitorum. All of those muscles are named according to what they do. So they're named according to action. The first one, flexor carpi radialis, is telling you I flex. Carpals are the wrists and on the radial side. So if you remember, carpals were the bones of the wrist, and you remember that the radius is the lateral bone of the forearm, the radius is on the thumb side, then it's telling you flexes the carpals, flexes the wrist on the side of the radius, while the next one flexes the wrist on the side of the ulna. And then finally, extensor digitorum is responsible for extending the digits. Digits are referred to as our fingers. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next grouping, the muscles of the abdominal wall. And I actually did a little something else so we could see these muscles of the abdominal wall. I have this guy right here. He's going to help us out. And we're also going to look on the inside to talk a little bit more about it. So we're talking about all of these muscles right here. And the muscle groupings that we have external oblique, internal oblique, transverse abdominis, and rectus abdominis. We're going to start with rectus abdominis. Rectus abdominis, and this guy, he's awfully chiseled because he's got more than a 6-pack. He's got like an 8 to 10 pack. But rectus abdominis are all these little square muscles that you see right here. And you'll notice that they are all connected by connective tissue. It's kind of light in between each one of the little squares. Can you see it? That's the aponeurosis. Remember we said an aponeurosis connects muscle to muscle. And there's also what looks like a line all the way down the center of the abdomen in between these muscles. You know, and some folks, you can see that really, really good. Now, don't think that you don't have a 6-pack, because all of us do. You just can't see it on all of us. It's just how it is. But if you decide you want it to be seen, then just go ahead, get your exercise in and change your diet, and you'll look just like this guy. Okay, so here we have rectus abdominis. All of these muscles are considered rectus abdominis, okay? Now I'm going to turn on the inside because I want you to see something else. Now here he's got about a 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, he got a 10-pack here. Okay? So even though it's only pointing to one muscle, all of those are considered rectus abdominis. And down the middle now, you can really see that connective tissue. It actually has a name. And if you could please write in, and I'm going to write it up here, The name of that aponeurosis, that line, so to speak, that goes down the center is linea, L-I-N-E-A, alba. And I tried to draw the line to it, but this right here, that connective tissue right there in the middle, is called linea alba, L-I-N-E-A-A-L-B-A. Okay, so now we know where rectus abdominis is. Now it's time to look for external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis. Sorry, dropped something. Okay. Of course, external oblique is telling you that it is the most superficial muscle. It's the one that's closest to the surface. External oblique, and I'm going to show you this diagram, is this muscle right here. And you'll notice it's indicating that the fibers are oblique. So that means they're in a diagonal. So external oblique, those muscle fibers here have the oblique fashion. Now you cannot see internal oblique unless you peel back external oblique. And when you do, you will notice that internal oblique, the striations are in the opposite direction of external oblique. And then finally, if you want to see transverse abdominis, you notice that you'd have to peel back internal oblique, and it would reveal the horizontal striations of that particular muscle. So external oblique is the most superficial. Then you have internal oblique, and then finally you have the one that is deepest or furthest away from the surface, and that's transverse abdominis. Okay, moving right along. Okay, we're going to move to the muscles that move the thigh. Now the muscles that move the thigh, and if you're wondering where I got these diagrams from, these are diagrams that are in your textbook. I just happen to have the transparency of them, and I thought it would be a good tool just to allow you to be able to see the muscle groupings as I'm talking about them a bit. The muscles that move the thigh are actually located in the hip, groin, and actually internally as well. So let me show you those. I am looking for okay. First one we have is psoas major. Now, psoas major is normally one of those muscles that you would not see. The only time that you see psoas major are in cases of autopsies. Because remember, the abdominal pelvic cavity, all of the internal viscera will be placed into a viscera bag. You remove the viscera bag, and then you have the hollow cavity. The reason why you would need to know, here it is, where psoas major is because psoas major is an anatomical guide to help us locate the iliac artery. We need that as an anatomical guide so we can raise that iliac artery, or we can at least have that anatomical location to help us potentially be able to access the external iliac. The external iliac is really important because as it continues to travel inferiorly, it becomes the femoral artery. The femoral artery is a very large artery, and we use it to inject. In autopsy cases, remember, the medical examiner has severed the major arteries that we need in order to inject. And it's not sufficient just to hypodermically inject with a trocar and just inject the fluid into the tissue. No, we actually need to try to locate and raise a vessel and inject our arterial solution through the vascular system. Because remember, formaldehyde is a gas, and we are relying on capillaries. And when we get to the circulatory system, we'll talk about this a little bit more. But we are relying on the capillaries because they have walls that are so very thin that it will allow the gases to pass right through them. So if this is my vessel, but I've got tissue over here, then it might be such that, yeah, this area around here may actually get some type of distribution of the gas. But what about way over here? Well, I'm relying on those very, very small vessels that act as kind of like the exits off of a major highway, let's say. Because you can ride on 64 all day long, but you're not going to be able to get to any neighborhoods unless you take an exit. Get it? So we need to make sure that we locate a vessel. And in autopsy cases, we would actually be able to see this portion. Psoas major is located way up. The origin is at about the 11th or 12th rib. Well, normally, we wouldn't see that because the abdominal cavity would still have the organs in it. But in cases of autopsies, we can use that particular muscle to help us locate the external iliac, because the external iliac artery runs along the medial border of that vessel, and it will continue inferiorly down the leg. Okay, so that's psoas major. The largest and strongest muscle in the body is the next one, and that is gluteus maximus. I think we all know this one. You might be sitting on it right now. Gluteus maximus is the largest and the strongest muscle in the body. And just to look at it from a posterior view, there it is back there as well. Largest and strongest muscle in the body. In addition to that, if there's a maximus, there's a minimus. You just need to know that it's part of the grouping that moves the thigh. And then the next three, adductor longus, adductor brevis, longus, and magnus. Trying to see if I can find these. Yes, they are on in the same diagram, figure 9.37, I believe, that I just showed psoas major on. So we've got adductor magnus. It's named according to its action. Oh, that's magnus there. Adductor longus, named according to its action. And then also adductor brevis. Let's see if I can find that one up here. Yes. Adductor brevis. All named according to action. And then finally, we have the most medial of the muscles that move the thigh, and it's called gracilis. In this first diagram, it's that very thin muscle that comes down the side. It's the most medial of the muscles that move the thigh. All right, next muscle grouping. The muscles that move the leg are located in the thigh. So we're talking about from your knee down. That's the area that is moving, but all of those muscles are located in the thigh. So we have two very large groups. We have the hamstring group, which are located on the back side of the leg, and then we've got the quadricep group. The quadricep group located on the front side of the leg. When one group is contracted, the other one is relaxed. So for the hamstring group, we have biceps femoris, named according to the divisions of attachment and where it's located, because it has two divisions of attachment, thus the prefix bi, and femoris is telling you it's along the femur. So if we look at the hamstring group, here they are. You will notice biceps femoris, located right here, does have two divisions of attachment. In addition to that, we have semitendinosus and semimembranosus that are also muscles of the hamstring group. That's all you need to know about those. It's the fact that those three muscles are considered the hamstrings, and they're located on the back of the thigh. Sartorius is not a part of either group. However, sartorius is actually a muscle that you can see better almost from the anterior view. And it's kind of shaped like an S. Here it is right here on this one. Sartorius. It starts kind of on the lateral side. The origin is on the lateral side of the hip, like right up here on the crest of the ilium. Because remember, the ilium is the top flaring portion of the os coxa. That's its origin. And then it kind of comes around in an S-shaped fashion, and it inserts on the medial border, right at the medial border of the knee. That's sartorius. but it's a muscle that helps to move the lower leg. And then finally, we have the quadricep group. Quadriceps, 4 muscles. Rectus femoris. Anytime you see the word rectus, oftentimes that muscle comes right down the middle. And then we have 3 that have the same first name. Vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and vastus intermedius. So, looking at those muscles from the anterior view, where's the one that I like the most? Okay. Rectus femoris is this muscle right here. Kind of looks like a teardrop on someone who's got very little body fat. You can actually see what looks like the teardrop of rectus femoris. Now, if you are able to remove that particular muscle, then you will reveal the vastus group. You've got vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, and vastus medialis. So, for either leg, this is my analogy, and I'm going to draw it for you. Think about a chicken drumstick. Okay, that's your drumstick. Okay, let's just say that this is a right drumstick. Okay, so if it's the right drumstick, this would be the lateral side, and that would be the medial side. Well, when you eat a drumstick, you know, sometimes you can bite into it. For those of you that eat chicken, I know everybody doesn't eat chicken. I happen to love chicken. But sometimes you can bite it just right and get that big teardrop-like piece of meat that comes off. That's like rectus femoris. Remember I said it kind of has a bit of a teardrop shape. So you get that big chunk off. But then what you'll notice is that along the sides of the bone, you still have that little piece of meat that's over there. That's representative of vastus lateralis and vastus medialis. And then if you're wondering, well, where is that vastus intermedius? God can tell you that too. Okay, so I took a bite of my chicken drumstick. I wish I had one here. Take a bite of my drumstick. I get that big hunk of meat off, rectus femoris. And then on the side, I bite one side, and then I bite the other side, and I get the meat that's off of there. Vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, just depending on which leg it is. And then sometimes you'll notice that right along the middle of the bone, you got that little thin piece of meat that, you know, you can just kind of pull that off, or your teeth can pull that off. Vastus intermedius, because it's in between. It's the intermediate between vastus lateralis and vastus medialis. Bam! There you have it. Quadriceps. So the quadricep group, once again, you've got rectus femoris, the teardrop that's kind of covering intermedius. Then you've got vastus lateralis, vastus medialis, and then vastus intermedius. And then finally, we get to the muscles that move the foot. The muscles that move the foot are located in the lower leg. So, we've got tibialis anterior. Well, I think I know what that's named according to. Number 1 is location. It's on the tibia, and it tells you where. On the front of the tibia. No problem with that. Now, that second bullet, gastrocnemius. Oftentimes, we don't know what that is. But if I said it was the calf muscle, you'd have absolutely no problem knowing where that particular muscle is located. Here's a very, very good picture of gastrocnemius. Okay? The calf muscle. And what you notice about this calf muscle is that it has 2 heads. Now, normally anything that has 2 heads is preceded by the prefix bi, but this is not one of those cases, so don't get tripped up on the quiz if you're asked which of the following does not have 2 heads. Okay? So, this one does have 2 heads, even though it doesn't have the prefix bi as one of its indicators. And you notice it has this long tendon attached to it. It's the calcaneal tendon, which we also call the Achilles tendon. Soleus is a muscle that is kind of just deep to gastrocnemius, as you can see right here. And it's a muscle that helps to move the foot. And then plantaris. Plantaris is a very small muscle located behind the knee, but its name kind of suggests to you what it does. it helps to plant the foot. There it is. This is plantaris, and it's got a very, very long, thin tendon that attaches to it to help to plant the foot. And then finally, the last two, tibialis posterior, named according to where it's located, and it's on the back side of the tibia. And then fibularis longus, indicating that it's a long muscle located along the fibula. There you have it. We have finished with chapter 9. You will be quizzed on all of this information on Wednesday when you come to class. This video lecture will be available from now until 4 p.m. on Wednesday. So you can view it as often as you'd like. Make sure you access the muscle sheet, take good notes, and I'll see you Wednesday. Have a great day.